ready to come from everywhere else. Here they come. Oh, they shot guns at them. Oh, shit. Shit, they're shooting guns at them, real guns. Shit. They're blasting at the police.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Officer down.
Officer down, shots fired. 2 police officers shot in Louisville last night after protests erupted over the Breonna Taylor case. Both are in stable condition. A suspect is in custody. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. A few minutes past the 10 a.m. Eastern Time hour on the East Coast. I'm Sandra Smith. Good morning, Trace.
Sandra, good morning to you. Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Trace Gallagher. Anger and frustration boiling over in Louisville after a grand jury indicted only one of 3 officers in the police drug raid that led to Breonna Taylor's shooting death back in March. That one charge for wanton endangerment. Officers fired multiple times into Taylor's apartment, killing her during a drug raid. Kentucky's Attorney General says her boyfriend fired 1 shot at them first after they broke down her door.
Yesterday's indictment also sparking protests across the country from Buffalo, New York to Seattle, Washington, and Portland and beyond. And also here in New York City. That is where David Lee Miller is standing by live with the latest from across the nation. So, David, we understand the suspect in the shooting of those 2 Louisville police officers has now been identified.
That's right, Sandra. He's identified as 26-year-old Larynzo Johnson. He is now in police custody. He is expected to be arraigned tomorrow morning. He is charged with 2 counts of wanton endangerment and assault of a police officer. This in connection with the alleged shooting of 2 officers. Both of them suffered life-threatening injuries. And as you mentioned, there were demonstrations held from one coast to the other yesterday in dozens of U.S. cities. Some of them were violent, some of them were peaceful, all demanding justice in the death of Breonna Taylor. Thousands marched here in New York City. Protests were held here on the Upper East Side, Lower Manhattan, and in Brooklyn. There were no arrests. The demonstrators snarled traffic on 2 of the city's main bridges, sprayed red paint on some storefronts. Their message, Black Lives Matter.
We're out here for justice for Breonna Taylor. Justice was not served today. We see that, and we are righteously outraged.
Because if we do nothing, the police are going to continue to commit genocide on my brothers and sisters.
And in Portland, Oregon, a riot was declared as demonstrators there hurled firebombs and rocks outside a police precinct. Crowds were told to disperse, and when they didn't, police and federal officers responded. The feds reportedly used non-lethal munitions and a chemical irritant to clear the street. 13 protesters were arrested in Seattle. Police there say a demonstrator who hit an officer with a baseball bat, cracking his helmet, was charged with assault. Dumpsters were set ablaze, fireworks were tossed inside a police precinct, and security cameras were vandalized. And in Buffalo, New York, protests also took place. The driver of a pickup truck there struck one of the demonstrators. The victim suffered none life-threatening injuries. According to a published report, the driver was seen earlier in the evening yelling at demonstrators. That vehicle was later stopped by police. Protests, as I said at the outset, took place in many other U.S. cities. Many have vowed to continue the demonstrations. In the words of one demonstrator in Washington, D.C., and I quote, "We are not waiting for justice. We are not asking for justice. We are demanding it. We will be on the streets until justice is served." Sandra.
David Lee Miller, thank you.
Video footage. 2 police officers shot by Larynzo Johnson in Louisville, Kentucky, USA. News recap for September 24, 2020. Reports by Fox News. Larynzo Johnson charged in shooting of 2 Louisville police officers. The suspect accused of shooting 2 Louisville police officers during Breonna Taylor demonstrations Wednesday night faces assault and wanton endangerment charges, authorities revealed Thursday, as they announced 1 officer was released from the hospital, and the second is out of surgery and expected to recover. Larynzo Johnson, 26, was charged with 2 counts of assault in the first degree and 14 counts of wanton endangerment in connection with the shooting of police officers, Louisville Metro Interim Police Chief Robert Schroeder said at a press conference Thursday. The investigation is ongoing. He expected to be arraigned Friday. LMPD Major Aubrey Gregory, who is white, was treated and released from University Hospital with a leg wound after being shot beneath his hip. Officer Robinson DeRoches, who is black, was struck in the abdomen, is in stable condition after undergoing significant surgery and is expected to recover. LMPD also released 2 photos of the officers wounded. Schroeder said police made 127 protest-related arrests across the city, including in the Highland and downtown, overnight amid the demonstrations following the grand jury decision to charge only 1 officer in connection to the police operation that killed Taylor, but not her death. There were also at least 16 instances of looting across the city. I want to emphasize how grateful I am for LMPD. The men and women literally putting their lives on the line to protect our people and protect our city, Mayor Greg Fisher said at the press conference. What we saw last night with 2 police officers being shot is obviously completely unacceptable. Violence will only be a source of pain, not a cure for pain. We know violence is never the answer. Public safety and the work for racial justice and equity can and must coexist, he said. Shots rang out when Louisville police officers were conducting crowd control operations at Broadway and Brook Street, in response to a large crowd that had set fires, caused property damage and failed to disperse after being warned, according to the post-arrest complaint provided by the Jefferson County Clerk Office. Johnson intentionally used a handgun to fire multiple bullets at officers, addressing the crowd, the complaint said. 2 officers were struck by bullets, causing serious physical injury. Police said witnesses spotted Johnson firing a handgun at officers and running from the scene. The complaint said he was also in possession of a handgun at the time of his arrest, and law enforcement recovered video of the shooting showing the suspect fire at officers. Louisville Metro Police also released officer-worn body camera footage showing the moments that shots rang out. In addition to the officers who sustained gunshot wounds, a police sergeant was injured after being struck by a protester's baton, another sergeant suffered a knee injury while arresting a resisting individual, and an officer was exposed to blood and spit after a subject spit upon him during the protest, Schroeder said. There were several instances of damage to property, including business along Bardstown Road, the moving of barricades restricting traffic, and damage to a public works vehicle blocking a roadway. Due to the fires set outside the federal courthouse and along Jefferson Square Park, Schroeder said police declared an unlawful assembly just after 8 p.m. prior to the curfew taking place and made several announcements to disperse prior to moving in to clear the area. Fisher said a curfew from 9 p.m. until 6:30 a.m. will remain in effect a second night from late Thursday until early Friday. Click the link below to read the related article and watch the video coverage.
Oh,